So it seems to be a pretty common theme amongst these tech reviewers or tech reporters that RCS isn't it. iMessage here in the United States definitely has a strong foothold, and on the Android side of things, it seems to be kind of a crapshoot. Um, Definitely feel this is one of those situations where you can blame Google, and I have no issue blaming the company because at the end of the day, iMessage has only grown in popularity. Google has done a few things, and I think maybe they were trying to look at it from a more world centric manner of how you download these third party messaging apps, you communicate within those apps as opposed to using whatever the default messaging app is, and using that default messaging app well, hopefully with improved um, experiences, performance, better versatility, better features, and you end up with whatever or however many Google messaging apps have existed. And then now Apple is just like, well, we're just going to stick the course. iMessage is it. It defaults back to or falls back to SMS if it has to. And then, and this is where we are. So now RCS is a thing, has been a thing for a little while. Google took its sweet old time trying to, not taking it over the way that it should have, because it was kind of left up to the carriers to implement their own versions of RCS, which they did, but they weren't compatible with the RCS from other carriers. And then you end up, in the situation we had right here, where the rest of the world seems to be fine. But here in the United States, in a world where Apple just took the SIM card out of the phone, iMessage dominates half the country and question mark dominates the other half. So here from Digital Trends, we have, sorry, Google, Apple is right to keep ignoring RCS for the iPhone. With the latest release of iOS 16, Apple sees its message app pick up a slew of notable updates, with one notable exception, RCS, which I believe actually stands for Rich Communication Services, not Rich Chat Services. Despite Google's continued attempts to public shame Apple or the iPhone maker, the iPhone maker has covered its ears and steadily plowed around its building out of its own fairly successful messaging service. After a look at the state of RCS in 2022, this may just have been the right choice. RCS is still a mess. Let's do a quick recap of what RCS is. It's an update to the SMS standard that's powered by a mixture of Google and a handful of global carriers. It brings modern features like typing indicators, read receipts, and high-res image support to regular texting. It has been pointedly ignored by Apple, killing its utility as an SMS replacement between iPhones and Android phones. Although Google has pushed for RCS to come to the iPhone and replace SMS time after time, Apple's response has simply been a flat-out scene. Left them on red. The benefits are clear for Google. Being a green bubble wouldn't necessarily be a source of shame if RCS were to land. Apple's refusal here comes remarkably recent until you read the fine print. What? That's not recent. Remarkably reticent. Excuse me. Ooh, my vocabulary. All right, so this was news to me when I came down here. So only 20% of Android users have been estimated to have access to RCS. I want to click that link just to see where they got that from, and I probably will come back to it, but I didn't realize that. I really want to know what, like, I have to click on the link. All right, so this person says on Google's own numbers, less than 20% of Google Android phones currently have access to RCS. Do we have like, okay, I mean, he says it's Google's own, so all right, well, okay. So we come back here. Secondly, RCS is not necessarily a less confusing experience. Although it is nominally a carrier initiative, it is almost wholly run through Google's servers. Some carriers like AT&T do have their own implementation. It's an unstable mess, resulting in a broken experience where two users on the same phone but with different carriers could end up with different versions of RCS. Even Google's touted end-to-end encryption is only a feature of Google's Messages app, not RCS itself. All right. And then that's where it's like, that's where Google should have just taken this years ago, like almost a decade ago. Like however long iMessage has been around, Google should have said, we just need a competitor. Whatever it is, we'll do it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be compatible with iPhone right now, but we need a default messaging app that falls back to SMS that also provides these exact same experiences. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I do not remember what the full functionality of Hangouts was. And I know there were some other ones that I can't think of, but I know Allo could not serve as a default SMS client. So it's like, well, no reason to create a default messaging app or create a messaging app that can't serve as your default SMS client, because then you end up with users having to go back and forth between the two. Then, of course, you want, oh, well, let's hope that non-default messaging app also gets adopted on the iPhone, which probably won't happen. So now you're just really looking at subsets of categories here where they should have just said, all right, we're going to make what is now Android Messages or Google Messages, and that will be the default messaging app. And within that, we will build upon what a modern messaging experience should be. So yeah, it's Google's fault. It's Google's fault for not getting on it sooner. It's now Apple's fault for not adopting it, but you can't blame Apple for not adopting it because they're like, well, we have something that works. Yeah. But at the same time, they're also not opening it up. So that kind of sucks. I don't hear our users asking that we put a lot of energy in on that at this point. Tim Cook was quoted as saying, I would love to convert you to an iPhone. See, and that's where it's like, all right, Tim, my opinion of this situation is Android and iPhone users both know that there's an issue when it comes to sending messages cross-platform. And some Android users know what RCS even is. A lot don't. And I guarantee you, of the few people that I've been texting a little more regularly now since I have had this Android device, who are also Android users, some of which their phones support RCS, some of which, or whatever messaging app they're using does not support RCS. I would bet that most of them have no idea what RCS is. And I would expand that to globally. A lot of people just don't know what it is. Now you take that's the subset of people who are iPhone users and ask them what RCS is, and they will have no clue. And for them, some of their solutions to Android users are, well, you should just buy an iPhone. And it's like, well, that's not a practical way to look at this, because there are plenty of examples where if software weren't cross-platform, somebody would be hurt. Some customer would, or even maybe even whole businesses wouldn't be able to thrive or flourish because you need cross-platform compatibility. I mean, if we think about Microsoft Office, if Office only worked on the Windows platform, that would be extremely limiting to Microsoft because, of course, they want to make as much money as possible. But even for the Mac, they'd be like, or Apple would be like, well, I mean, yeah, we have a computer and we have, Sheets or whatever their versions of Office software is. So their, whatever the spreadsheet name is, their PowerPoint presentation software, their Word, their document editor, their word processor. So yeah, they have their alternatives, but Microsoft Office definitely is the leader in that game. So the cross-platform compatibility or the cross-platform options only make it better for the consumer. So whether or not Apple's users know that software can be tweaked or written to work across platforms, they know that there's a problem. And some of them, are those jerks, and they say, well, you should just buy yourself an iPhone. Others are like, well, yeah, there is a problem. And, they'll understand, like, I wouldn't want to tell somebody to come out and just buy an iPhone just so that way they can text better. But, Tim Cook is a great businessman. Like, he really is. And I just don't like that he said that. I'm not offended. Like, oh, man, I can't believe you said it. It's just like, come on, dude. You know that regardless of what you, CEO of the world's most profitable company is right now, or the most valuable company is right now, there's a problem. And you could adopt RCS, or you could propose a more realistic solution. Telling somebody to buy their mom an iPhone is not a realistic solution. Your stockholders would like to hear you say that, but and there are plenty of engineers in there that are like, yeah, we know. And some of those people who work for the company have family members and friends who have Android devices. And they're like, yeah, we know it's not as good as it could be. And yeah, switching over to iOS is not a practical solution. And I'm not even talking from a cost perspective. It's just, I just don't, some people just don't want to do it. Like I personally don't like iOS. I really don't. I look at the phone and I say, I am going to try to do the fewest amount of things possible with this device. I do use it for iMessage. Of course, if my main SIM card is in there, I'm also making phone calls. But for most of what I do on a mobile device, I will pull out an Android phone and do whatever I need to do on that particular phone. So here's some more stuff down here. Cook's response may seem unnecessary, but it does demonstrate one truth. There is choice. Yeah, there is. If you want interoperable messaging between Google and Apple devices, you can download Signal or WhatsApp. If you want an iMessage replacement, well, you're going to have to use iMessage on an iPhone. Okay, that's funny. That Google's own chat service has yet to catch on and create an organic demand. Groundswell is of its own is an indictment. It's one thing to bank on potential. It's another to try and fail. So yeah, people are going to use the default messaging app. I think I ranted about that earlier, either on this one or another one. But yeah, people are going to definitely just use the default. And around the world, things are different. I know that. But yeah, from one of the other articles I was reading, it was talking about how carriers in the past stopped charging fees by like the text message or whatever here in this country, but around the world they kept doing it. So therefore, the users started saying, "Hey, I'm going to download this third-party messaging app, so that way I don't have to pay text messaging fees." Makes sense. I don't remember exactly when that happened here in this country, when carriers started bundling those in, but it probably was around the same time that iMessage came out. I remember my first text messaging plan had like 200 text messages or something, and I can't remember if that extended into, I don't think it was when I had a BlackBerry. But, all that just to say, iMessage isn't going anywhere. It'd be nice if Apple chose to adopt RCS. It looks like they're not going to. So for the time being, yeah, we're just going to have two separate platforms with options to have a great messaging experience between them, but it's going to take work on all users, and that work is going to have to be downloading third-party messaging apps.